Our next athlete to be inducted is Simon Chiasson, and our presenter is committee member Lowell Cormier. Lowell.
Wow, I never heard of a banquet with so many Canadian championships. Isn't this unbelievable, the amount of Canadian championships that have come to New Waterford? Crazy. Oh my God. Pretty bad when you can't see. The late Simon Chiasson was born in New Waterford in 1946 to parents Leo and Anne. Simon had four siblings, Leona and Melvin, both deceased, as well as sisters Mary Ann, Mackenzie, and Wilfredine, Deanie, Holly, who is here this evening. Like most New Waterford youngsters, Simon was very active in sports during his formative years. As a student at Mount Carmel High School, Simon was a star keeper on several championship caliber soccer squads. However, Simon's favorite sport was basketball, and from an early age, Simon gravitated towards the game. He was influenced by older players who played on Mount Carmel teams, as well as members of the New Waterford's finest, the New Waterford Strands. Simon, being a keen observer, was able to model his game after some of New Waterford's greatest basketball players, Russell McNeil, Karl Marsh, and the incomparable Richie Spears. Simon's athletic ability and his passion for learning the game allowed him to become one of the best high school basketball players in the province. He was the leader of Mount Carmel teams that challenged for provincial titles. Towards the end of his grade 11 season, Simon was picked up by the powerhouse Central High School squad in their quest for the Canadian Championship. That squad featured some of the finest 16, 17, and 18-year-olds this province has ever assembled. Players like Dave McDonald, Donnie McCauley, Ron McGibbon, Terry McGibbon, I hate to say it, George Hughes. They were key players on the squad. The squad was coached by New Waterford's own John Wooden, Mr. Bob McDonald, affectionately known as Red Bob. The team advanced to the Canadian Championship in St. John, New Brunswick, where they were to play a strong New Brunswick squad led by former St. FX star Dave Barry. Simon had a scheduling conflict at the time because he was at the provincials in Kentville. So he missed the first game. So he gumbooted her over there, I guess, in the car and got there for the second and final game. So they lost the second game and won the third game. And that's an amazing accomplishment for a tiny school with less than 130 students. Simon played a key role on that team, and really, it just goes to show you that you need a strong Catholic to get the job done in your Central Gas. That was for you again, George. After graduating from Mount Carmel, Simon attended Xavier College while at Xavier, Simon and his buddy Hector Roach led the Xavier squad to provincial intermediate basketball championship. From there, Simon was recruited to play basketball at Acadia University by the legendary Stu Aberdeen. Simon was immediately immersed into a championship basketball culture following one of his basketball role models, Richie Spears. It must be noted that the majority of Simon's teammates were Americans who came with great resumes. At the time, Acadia, St. Mary's, and St. FX were loaded with American players. So you had to be quite a basketball player as a Nova Scotian to make one of these teams. And I must interject a personal story. At this time, there's about a 4-year age gap between myself and Simon. And while Simon was at Acadia, he would come back home at Christmas and March break, summer times, and he would get the keys to the gym and he would invite me to go with him. I really had no idea, I still don't, why he got me. And I'm willing to bet that I spent 25 two-hour sessions at least in the gym with Simon. He'd teach me skills, and then he would have me play him one-on-one. Now really, seriously. I'm in grade 10 and 11, and I'm playing one of my idols in games of one-on-one. And I often thought, what did Simon actually get out of that? Well, I think he might have been trying to boost his ego. And what I got was simply unbelievable. He would teach me the shooting form. He would show me moves off the rocker step, and he would teach me to get into the defensive stance. I never really picked up on that one, though. So Simon had everything as a player. He could shoot the lights out from the perimeter, and he could drive to the basket. Being young at the time, he was the first guy that I saw personally that could dribble the ball behind his back, throw his legs, the stuff that the kids do today effortlessly, but there wasn't a lot of that going on then. And he had a tremendous stutter step which into a crossover. He had honed his game after his role models I mentioned before, and when he went to Acadia, he has received advanced coaching and got to compete against legends like Brian Heaney and Steve Konchowski. After university, Simon played a number of years with the Modern Strands, one of the greatest dynasties in provincial sports, with 16 Nova Scotia and Maritime Championships. That's a phenomenal record. Along with Donnie McCauley, Carl Marsh, Mike Roberts, Spike McKinnon, Bozo Steele, and Russ McNeil, to name a few, Simon and the Strands were prominent on the provincial basketball circle. Simon was often high scorer for the team, using his younger legs and skills to lead his former mentors to victory. I've heard stories of Simon had quite an edge to him on the defensive side of those days. He must have learned that from beating up on me. Now seriously, Simon could really play defense. He had quick feet. He had perfect technique taught by Aberdeen. He had good hands. And my God, he was tenacious. Spiky and Carl, I've heard this story about 50 times. Spiky and Carl always talk about Simon when he took on Dick Loisel in Halifax. Now, a lot of you guys don't know who Dick Loisel is. I'm going to ad-lib a little bit and go off, but Dick Loisel was really a professional athlete. He was in the same system with Mike Roberts, but he advanced to AAA, and he hurt his arm. He should have been a Major League Baseball player. And he went to St. Mary's on an athletic scholarship because he couldn't get one in the States. He's good enough to play D1 in football and basketball in the States, but because he was a professional athlete, he couldn't get a scholarship, so he came to St. Mary's, so he started in basketball and baseball. And he was ruthless. I just read a book the other day on the H&D League, and I'm getting a drift here, but I'm a storyteller, but you should get nervous out there. But anyhow, he was in a game against Hum Joseph, and Spiky and Claudia will remember that name. Some other guys might. But Hum Joseph was kind of a yacker. He might have been a trash talker for what I'm gathering, and he's been giving it to Loisel, and so the bases were loaded, and it was about three balls on Hum Joseph, and before he went up, he told Joseph he was going to drill him. So even with the bases loaded and a 3-0 count, he drilled him. And he knocked him down, flattened him. And we have a local legend that did the same thing to him at first base, but I won't mention that name here. I don't think I should do that. But Hum must have been a trash talker, because I know for a fact that's twice I know he got flattened. But anyhow, Simon took this guy on for the Strands. Now, Simon's probably just fresh out of Acadia, full of what and vinegar, and ready to go. And so I guess Simon got down in the defensive stance, but he was trash talking Dick Loisel the whole night. but he got Dickie. Come on, let's go, Dickie. And Strands won the game, and there was almost a rhubarb in the dressing room afterwards, because the dressing rooms were combined, sort of like there was no common shower, and their boys were getting a shower. So Rod Shoveler and Lizelle were not happy after the game. Okay, now where am I at? Yeah, I'm almost done. Okay, I'm sorry to go another page. Simon wrapped up his playing career with the Strands that won the Maritime title in 1970 when Dave Nutbrown came into town. And he was a valuable member of that team. And the Strands pulled off the victory on the second two-game total point stun series, but that's the way it was. And this game went to overtime to settle it after the second game. And Simon was one of the first guys that I noticed. His career was shortened because of knee injuries, and he's one of the first guys I ever noticed that had those big, bulky braces with the metal bars on the side of them. And I think with medicine and technology of today, he probably would have been able to play longer. Simon is a member of the Nova Scotia Sports Hall of Fame, with the famous Central Juveniles. He's also a member of the Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame with the Juveniles and the 1970 Strands. And has been inducted in this Northside Hall of Fame as a builder. Richie Spears, who's a great storyteller in his own right, told two stories about Simon, he and Simon, at Simon's funeral. And I guess one day they broke into the Central Gym. Big surprise, they broke into some gym. And they were playing basketball there, and somehow the janitor wandered in, and he was not very happy, and he wanted the basketball, but the boys decided not to give him the basketball. So they played keep away with him for about 10 minutes. He was totally exhausted and very, you know what? And they put the ball on the floor, and I don't think they ever got back in the gym. And then there was another time, it was Easter Sunday. And they tried to pry the door open at Mount Carmel Gym. These guys were good at prying doors open, weren't they? And they couldn't get in, so they went down to visit Frank Ongo, who I think lived on 10th Street. And they were hoping for the keys. They were going to go the right way, but it was New Year's. Frank was out of town. So they went over to Calvin, and I think Richie was ready to break the window, but Simon stopped them and said, Richie, no, they'll know who did it. And so they went down to this, they pried the door open in the Strand. But unfortunately, when they got in the Strand, the night before New Year's Eve, there was a big dance. So they had to clean up the tables. I mean, there's two guys wanting to play basketball that bad. Of course, it was 20 below. They had no other place to go. And so they get in there, they clean off all the tables. They got one basketball. They're wearing gloves. They're shooting with gloves on. Imagine. And shooting the basketball, but the net is new and cold. So one guy shot for 5 minutes. One guy stood on a table next to the net, and when the ball went in, they take it out and pass it back, and then they rotate, and they spend about 2 hours doing that. So tell me why those guys became good players. Okay. Okay, I just told that story, but I'll go to it. So Simon was married to the late Joan Bardswood, and they settled down in Joan's hometown of City Mines, where Simon started a legendary basketball program, which included the first week-long basketball camps in Cape Breton. He was a tremendous basketball coach and clinician. He put basketball on the map in City Mines and inspired generations of players who are still giving back to the game today. The Simon, that's the name of it, the Simon Basketball Tournament, which is really growing in fame, is a testament to Simon's legacy in City Mines and Bedeque, where he eventually settled. Simon's sons David and Jonathan, who unfortunately couldn't be with us because of other commitments, both became top top-notch basketball players during the time I was coaching at Beck, and Simon was coaching at Memorial. We had some knock 'em down, drag 'em out games at that time. Both these guys faced lots of junk defenses courtesy of yours truly, boxing ones, triangle and twos, triangles with 2 guys on David, the whole 9 yards. That became the order of the day to limit the damage the Chiasson boys were doing to us. They could both shoot the ball. Genes really do matter. Simon wrapped up his coaching career at Bedeck High School, coaching the girls' team to 2 provincial titles. Jessica Wong of Canadian women's hockey fame was one of his star players. In the year 2000, Simon was honored as division chair for the 19th annual Coal Bowl. In 2010, Simon was honored with the Frank Baldwin Award for his devotion to the game as an organizer, coach, referee, and clinician. Frank and Simon were great friends, and Frank, who had passed away by then, would have loved that Simon was the much-deserved recipient of an award named in his honor. It's, in conclusion, you'll be glad to hear that, I guess, it's my privilege to ask Jason Hawley, Simon's grandnephew and a pretty good basketball player himself, to come up and accept this Simon's induction into the New Waterford District Sports Hall of Fame. He's going to step up.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Chiasson family, I'd just like to thank the committee members, Lowell, for the great speech, and thank you to all you guys for being here tonight.